It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast show. Yes, and it's a Thursday morning. Glad to have your company. Always so good to start the day off with you. You know that tune, those little cute laughs. It's all about baby talk. And today we're focusing on motor skills, which of course involve your baby using his or her muscles to move around. And where,
those big muscles.
Of course, those gross motor skills refer to the larger parts of muscles that involve the arms, the legs, the feet. So when it comes to things like crawling, walking, running, those are the kinds of muscles that are involved. And so on today's Baby Talk, we're of course joined by our friend when it comes to all things baby, Occupational Therapist Meg Faure, who's promised to give us a bit more clarity and tips on how we can encourage our little ones to develop through those stages. Because it's always such a massive milestone, like, oh my word, he's standing!
But you're in that phase now where it is
totally.
you're kind of ticking boxes.
Yeah,
and
Meg.
Oh, how we lean on you, Meg.
Thanks for doing it.
This becomes such a self-indulgence segment because I think we're quite lucky in that the phases that we've gone through, you've been able to follow me and I've been able to follow you, and we've kind of seen this. But that phase that you're in now, about 7 months, that so many interesting things are happening. And it doesn't happen all at the same time for every single baby. But how do we kind of measure these things? Because you don't want to be too kind of stuck to a rigid schedule, and then you feel like you're failing as a parent when your child isn't doing one of these things. But how do you generally measure those milestones?
Yeah, so I mean, you bring a very important point to the table, and that is that you mustn't measure them too closely, because it puts a lot of pressure on us as parents and on our babies as well. Parenting is not a competition, and your children's milestones are not a competition. What's interesting is that milestones have a range in which they normally develop, and it doesn't mean that if your baby's on the later side of normal that he's got any problems. So, you know, that's the main message, first of all, to parents, is don't measure it too closely and don't sweat it if they're not hitting those milestones like your friend's baby is.
Exactly, yeah. So, but let's take a look at the first 6 months and what it is that parents should be looking out for in terms of those milestones.
So that first year is a miracle, because your baby goes from being completely governed by gravity and they are unable to move against gravity, no voluntary movements, to within 12 months they are walking. So what happens in the first 6 months is that they start to lift their head against gravity, so they push up on their arms, and then very critically, they start to roll. So that's the first big milestone that you'll see. That
And you're cheering there. You're like, yeah,
he did it!
He's lifting his head.
I'm a parent! So he lifts his head, he plays with his feet, and then he eventually rolls. And that's the first big one. And then, of course, the second big one, which, Kat, your baby will just be around that age, is sitting, which happens in the first 6 months. 6 months approximately. Your baby will start to sit up. So those are the two milestones, gross motor milestones, that people watch for.
But that's straight back. I love it.
He still needs to manage the crunch up. So he still needs assistance, like 2 fingers. Here we go.
You've seen the size of their heads at that age, man.
Come on, you know, belly, man. It's cute.
We love that. We love it. So how do you encourage development beyond oral kind of, you can do it? What do we need to do to encourage development?
The most important thing for the first 6 months is tummy time. And, I mean, mothers and fathers get told this ad nauseum, but it is so important. If your baby's got time on their tummies on the floor, that's how they can start to work those back muscles and those neck muscles, and they cannot learn to roll and later crawl unless they've actually done that. So tummy time's critical. As soon as you arrive at a place, moms and dads, get your baby out of car seats. You know, we don't want them curled up in those car seats because it's too passive, it doesn't work their muscles.
We know about the sedentary life for adults as well.
Exactly.
Logic is logic.
Exactly. So get your babies out of the car seats onto the floor, principle one.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about how you can start encouraging your baby to sit up. And maybe you can give me some tips on how to encourage my boy to like tummy time. Because you put him on tummy time and he's like, and then he's rolled and he's like, he's chilled there. But then he gets annoyed.
See the world, man.
We'll talk about that and more. It's all about the developmental milestones in terms of motor skills and gross motor skills. Our chat, of course, is with you as well. So give us a call on 0214309881. It's Baby Talk, baby.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Express on SABC3. The dads are on the couch. The expert Meg Faure is on the other side. We're talking about milestones in terms of your baby's physical development, especially those gross motor skills. We've opened up our line 0214309881, and Silwane is on the line. Good morning, Silwane.
Good morning. How are you?
Very, very well. Thanks for the call. What is your question?
My question is, my sister's daughter is 1 year, 1 month. She
1 year, 1 month.
Yes, she hasn't started to crawl or walk, so I'm a little bit worried.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering if there is a problem or something.
I'm just going to ask, I don't know if you're privy to that information, but has your sister discussed this with her ped? Has she spoken about it? Because we were actually thinking maybe the baby was a little bit older, but 1 year, 1 month, that might not necessarily be a major worry, Meg.
Yeah. No, look, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Yes, crawling typically happens between about 8 and 10 months. That's when babies usually start to crawl. And walking typically happens between about 10 months and 18 months. Those are typical ages. So yes, the baby's late on the crawling side, on the crawling side, but within the walking side, absolutely fine. Now, lots of babies don't crawl, so I wouldn't be terribly worried about this baby. What I would be doing, though, is I'd be making sure that the baby had lots of time on their tummy and on a floor. No seats, those little plastic seats that they sit in.
No
car
walking
seats,
aids. Yeah.
No walking rings. Get the baby on the floor. And then if the baby is not crawling and not walking by 18 months, then you would need to see a clinic sister or, ped, something like that. But I'm not too worried about a 13-month-old who hasn't crawled and is not walking at this stage.
Yeah, loads and loads of tummy time.
Tummy time.
Yeah, on the floor. And
On
also
the
the
floor.
other thing that I'd be looking for is how interested is the little one in actually all the things around them. So some little ones want to sit on their bums, but they actually do reach for things. They're interested in the world. They're interested in moving. They put their arms up to you. And if the baby's doing all of that, it's probably okay. It probably is okay.
Okay, Silvani, thank you very much for that. Much appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question to ask, because you were talking about walking rings and walking aids and so on. So what we've got him is like not a walking aid, but it's a jumping exercise ring, right? So he sits in this thing and his toes are touching and there's all kinds of musical elements around it, whatever. And because he's got high energy, right? So he jumps a lot.
Yeah.
And, you put him in there for like all 3 minutes and he loves
We
it.
had exactly the same thing. Is that
Yeah.
considered an aid?
Yeah, and is that bad for
or-
him?
I mean, you're
I don't
cringing
love
there,
them.
which... Why? Because he loves it so much.
I know, but you know what happens when your baby's upright before the time when they should be walking. So, for instance, Cat Jaws is 7 months. It's not appropriate for him to be walking. Then he's in a static position, and even though he's bouncing, he's actually not using his muscles like he would if he was on the floor. And so we do find when you use aids like that, walking rings, little bumbo seats, those little seats, and those jumpers that you're talking about that don't roll, but you actually can jump in them. Those things, often we see delayed crawling, and so we don't see the babies go on to crawl. So that's why, really at this age, we want them on the floor as much as
Just let
possible.
nature take its
Absolutely, and
course.
nature will take its course.
Do I have to throw it away now?
I'm sorry, and it's expensive.
Gumtree, or, just get it out there.
Just try and limit the amount of time.
yeah.
So use it for 5 minutes maximum a day would be
Yeah,
my
but that's what we do. It's
Yeah.
and it's certainly not even an everyday thing. I'm trying to
Yeah.
make myself feel better, but gee whiz.
Oh, trust me, nothing is ever for longer than 5 minutes with a baby anyway, so it's all good.
Can we then talk about, so baby sitting upright right now, so lots of time on the floor. Is there something that you can do? Because, for instance, at swimming class, teacher tickles his toes to make him kind of want to wiggle forward and start the crawling thing. Are there other things you could do to help him crawl? Because it is important to go from
Put
sitting
the thing
to
he
crawling
likes
to
the
walking.
most just out of reach.
So, I mean, crawling is the one milestone that many babies skip. So, and we really want them to crawl because crawling is very important. It builds the fine motor muscles, it builds the shoulder girdle muscles, and once you're crawling, you get
kneecaps,
under the
man,
table,
yeah.
and what happens when you're under the table is that you learn about your spatial awareness, which is the
Oh, my
foundation
goodness.
for maths. So, on a number of levels, we really do want babies to crawl. So, what can we do? Couple of things. If your baby's sitting in a position, put a toy to the left or right of them. So not necessarily in front of, because then they'll just lean forward, but to the side, and they'll start to go sideways, and before you know it, they end up in a 4-point position because they're rotating sideways. So that's one idea. Number 2, tummy time. Put them on the floor with a toy in front of them, and if they're battling to get to it, put your hands behind their little feet so they can start to push against it, so they get the sense that I can actually get to something. And then another really nice idea, particularly for the mum who phoned in, what you can do is you can roll up a towel and put it under the baby's chest. So you put the towel on the floor, lay the baby on their chest, pick up the ends of the towel like that to create a hammock under their tummy, and actually rock them in that position. And as you rock them, they learn that they can start to move in that position.
Just don't lift the towel too high.
Okay, listen,
Wow, that is
at
so
Meg
cool.
Faure,
Thank you.
follow her on social media. She's a wealth of knowledge and expertise when it comes to all things babies. Thank you very much, Meg. We've run out of time. New age dance, man, doing it. Cool.